Jake Martinez stood at the window of the big spaceship and watched the stars. His hands were sweaty. Today was the most important day in human history. The aliens were coming to meet them for the first time. The ship was called Harmony's Edge. It was huge and shiny. Half of it was built by humans. The other half was built by aliens from the Galactic Federation. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful and scary at the same time. "Martinez, get over here," Captain Lisa Brooks called out. She was a tough woman with short brown hair and serious eyes. "They're almost here." Jake walked over to where the other humans were standing. There were 20 of them total. Scientists, soldiers, and diplomats. Everyone looked nervous. They had been waiting for this moment for months. Dr. Alex Kim was checking his equipment for the 10th time. He was the team's alien expert. "Remember," he said to everyone, "these Velthari people are very advanced. They can read minds. Don't think anything rude." Jake touched the translator device on his ear. He was the language expert. His job was to help humans and aliens talk to each other. But he had studied the Velthari language for 2 years and still felt like he knew nothing. A loud sound echoed through the ship. Then a voice spoke over the speakers. "The Velthari ship is here. Prepare for docking." Everyone got quiet. Jake looked out the window again. A ship was coming toward them. It was silver and shaped like a teardrop. It moved without making any sound. It was 10 times bigger than any human ship. "That's it," whispered Dr. Kim. "The most powerful empire in the galaxy." The docking took 30 minutes. Jake could feel the ship shake when the two vessels connected. His heart was beating fast. Earth had worked so hard to join the Galactic Federation. If this meeting went wrong, humans might never get another chance. Captain Brooks straightened her uniform. "Everyone remember the plan. Be polite, be respectful. Let me do most of the talking." The airlock door opened with a hiss. Jake held his breath. 3 tall figures walked through the door. They looked almost human, but not quite. Their skin was pale blue. Their eyes were large and silver. They wore long robes that seemed to glow. They moved like they were floating. Behind them came more aliens. Soldiers with weapons, scientists with strange devices, and then at the end, someone special walked in. Jake knew right away she was important. She was taller than the others. Her robe was pure white and covered in jewels. Her hair was long and silver like starlight. When she moved, everyone else stepped aside. "Princess Zarathus," Dr. Kim whispered. "The heir to the Velthari Empire." The princess stopped in the middle of the room. She looked around slowly. Her silver eyes passed over each human, but her face showed nothing. No smile. No frown. Nothing. Captain Brooks stepped forward. "Your Highness, welcome to our ship." "I am Captain Lisa Brooks. We are honored to meet you." The princess did not look at her. She did not speak. She acted like Captain Brooks was not there. Dr. Kim tried next. "Princess, we have prepared gifts from Earth, art and music from our culture." Again, nothing. The princess stared straight ahead like Dr. Kim had not spoken. One by one, the humans tried to talk to her. The diplomats offered trade agreements. The scientists shared their discoveries. The military officers showed respect for her guards. But Princess Zarathus ignored them all. She walked through the room like the humans were furniture. Sometimes she would stop and look at the walls or the ceiling, but never at the people trying to talk to her. The other Velthari aliens talked to the humans. They answered questions and looked at the gifts. But they seemed embarrassed by their princess. One of them, a military officer named Commander Kess, kept apologizing. "Please understand," Commander Kess said to Captain Brooks. "The princess is very tired from the long journey." But Jake could see this was not about being tired. The princess was choosing to ignore them. Her silver eyes were sharp and alert. She heard everything. She just did not care. Hours passed. The humans showed the aliens around the ship. They shared meals together. They talked about science and trade. But Princess Zarathus remained silent and distant. Jake stayed in the background during most of this. His job was to help with language problems, but the Velthari spoke perfect English. He felt useless. He just watched and took notes. But as he watched, he began to notice something strange. Sometimes, when no one else was looking, the princess would glance in his direction. It was quick, just for a second. But Jake was sure it happened. The first time, he thought it was an accident. The second time, he wondered if he was imagining things. But by the 5th time, he was certain. Princess Zarathus was looking at him, not at Captain Brooks, who was in charge. Not at Dr. Kim, who knew the most about aliens. At him, Jake Martinez, the language expert who was not even talking. Each time their eyes met for that brief moment, Jake felt something strange. Like electricity in the air. Like she was trying to tell him something without words. But then she would look away and Jake would think he was being crazy. The day got worse and worse. Captain Brooks looked frustrated. Dr. Kim kept wiping sweat from his forehead. The other humans whispered to each other when they thought the aliens could not hear. "This is a disaster," one diplomat said quietly. "Earth sent us to make friends," said another, "but she acts like we're insects." Jake felt sad for his teammates. They had worked so hard for this. Everyone on Earth was counting on them, but the most important alien in the galaxy would not even look at them. As evening came, the formal dinner began. Long tables were set up in the main hall. Humans and aliens sat together. Everyone tried to be friendly and polite, except Princess Zarathis. She sat at the head table and ate in silence. When humans tried to talk to her, she stared past them like they were invisible. Jake sat at a table in the back. He was not important enough to sit with the leaders. He picked at his food and watched the princess from across the room. She was beautiful, he had to admit. But there was something cold about her beauty. Like looking at a statue made of ice. Commander Kess stood up and made a speech about friendship between species. The humans clapped politely. The princess did not react at all. Captain Brooks gave a speech about learning from each other. Again, polite clapping. The princess might as well have been sleeping with her eyes open. Jake felt angry. Not just for himself, but for all humans. They were trying so hard to be good neighbors in the galaxy. They had fought wars and solved problems just to prove they were ready to join the galactic community. And this alien princess was treating them like dirt. But then, as Jake was thinking these angry thoughts, something impossible happened. Princess Zarathis turned her head and looked directly at him. Not a quick glance this time. A long, steady look. Her silver eyes met his brown ones across the crowded room. For a moment that felt like forever, they stared at each other. Jake felt like she could see inside his mind. Like she knew everything he was thinking. The anger, the frustration, but also his hope that humans and aliens could be friends. Then the princess looked away and the moment was over. Jake sat there feeling confused and shaky. What had just happened? Why had she looked at him like that? And why did he feel like his life had just changed forever? Around him, the dinner continued. People talked and laughed, but Jake barely heard them. All he could think about was those silver eyes and the feeling that Princess Zarathis knew something about him that he did not even know about himself. The first day of first contact was ending badly. But Jake had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger and more dangerous than anyone expected. 3 days had passed since the aliens arrived. 3 long, terrible days. Jake sat alone in the language lab at 2 in the morning. The ship was quiet. Most people were sleeping. But Jake could not sleep. He was too worried about how badly everything was going. The meetings were a disaster. Every day the human leaders tried to talk to Princess Zarathis. Every day she ignored them completely. She would not look at them. She would not speak to them. She acted like humans did not exist. Yesterday, Captain Brooks had tried to give the princess a tour of the ship. The princess walked through every room without saying a word. When Captain Brooks explained how human technology worked, the princess stared at the ceiling. When they showed her earth art and music, she looked bored. Dr. Kim was getting desperate. He had brought his best research to share with the aliens, studies about human biology and culture, but the princess would not even glance at his work. The other aliens were embarrassed. Commander Kess kept making excuses. She is thinking about important matters, he would say. Royal duties require much concentration, but Jake could see the truth. The other Velthari aliens were worried too. They whispered to each other in their own language when they thought no one was listening. Jake had learned enough of their language to understand some words. They were saying things like dangerous and mission failure. Jake looked at his computer screen. He was studying recordings of the princess. The ship's computers could detect telepathic brainwaves. All the Velthari showed telepathic activity, but the princess's brain patterns were the strongest. What he saw confused him. When the princess was ignoring the human leaders, her brain showed disgust and annoyance. But sometimes, for just a few seconds, the patterns changed. They became curious, almost interested. Jake had checked the timing. Those moments of curiosity happened when the princess was looking in his direction. He rubbed his tired eyes. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe he wanted to believe he was special when he was really just another human the princess did not care about. A soft sound made him look up. Someone was standing in the doorway. Princess Zarathis stood there like a ghost. Her white robe glowed softly in the dark hallway. Her silver eyes reflected the light from his computer screen. Jake's heart stopped. He tried to stand up, but his legs felt weak. The most important alien in the galaxy was here. In his small lab. In the middle of the night. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Jake did not know what to do. Should he call Captain Brooks? Should he bow? Should he run? Then the princess stepped into the room. The door closed behind her with a quiet hiss. Jake Martinez, she said. Her voice was soft and musical, but hearing his name from her lips was the most shocking thing that had ever happened to him. She knew his name. She had been ignoring everyone for 3 days, but she knew his name. Your Highness, Jake managed to say. His voice came out as a whisper. The princess moved closer. Now he could see her face clearly. She was even more beautiful up close, but there was something in her silver eyes that looked almost lonely. You may sit, she said. I have something to tell you. Jake sat down hard in his chair. His hands were shaking. How do you know my name? I know many things about you, Jake Martinez. The princess walked to his computer and looked at the brainwave patterns on the screen. You are 28 years old. You studied languages at Stanford University. You learned to speak 17 different languages before you were 25. You volunteered for this mission because you believe humans and aliens can understand each other. Jake stared at her. You read my file? I read your mind. The words hit Jake like cold water. You can do that? The princess nodded. All Velthari can read thoughts. It is natural for us like breathing. But human minds are different from other species. She turned away from the computer and looked at him directly. Most human minds are loud and chaotic. They jump from thought to thought like animals. They are filled with anger, fear, and desires that make telepathic contact unpleasant. Jake felt his face get hot. Is that why you ignore us? Because our thoughts are ugly? That is part of it. The princess sat down in the chair across from him. But there is more. My people believe humans are dangerous. Your species is young and violent. Many Velthari think you should be contained, not welcomed into the galactic community. But you're here, Jake said. You came to meet us. Yes, because some of us believe humans might be different, that you might grow beyond your violent nature. She paused. I came here to decide which side is right. Jake felt sick. And what have you decided? The princess was quiet for a moment. Most humans confirm what my people believe. Their minds are exactly as chaotic and aggressive as we expected. But she tilted her head. Your mind is different. Different how? Quiet. Deep. When I read your thoughts, I do not see violence or chaos. I see curiosity, hope, a genuine desire to understand others, even those who are very different from you. Jake did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a language teacher who loved learning about other cultures. That is why I have been watching you, the princess continued. Your mind intrigues me. When you think about my people, you do not think about what you can gain from us. You think about what we might teach each other. So why have you been ignoring everyone else? Jake asked. Captain Brooks is a good person. Dr. Kim really wants to be friends with your people. The princess's face became sad. Because I cannot show interest in humans publicly. My escort, Commander Kess, reports everything I do to the Velthari High Council. If they believe I am becoming too friendly with humans, they will end this mission and recall me home. But that's terrible. How are we supposed to be friends if you can't even talk to us? That is the problem. The princess stood up and walked to the window. My people sent me here with secret orders. I am supposed to evaluate humans and decide if you are worthy of joining our civilization. But I am also supposed to maintain distance and show no favoritism. Jake understood now. So you've been testing us. Seeing how we react when you ignore us. Yes. And most humans have reacted exactly as my people predicted. With frustration, anger, and wounded pride. Your Captain Brooks demanded to speak to my superiors. Your Dr. Kim offered increasingly valuable gifts thinking he could buy my attention. But those are normal reactions, Jake protested. Anyone would be upset if they were ignored. Perhaps. But they confirmed that humans think like traders and conquerors. They see friendship as something to be earned or purchased. The princess turned back to face him. But you did not react that way. You watched. You tried to understand. You did not become angry at me, even though you had every right to be angry. Jake thought about this. It was true. He had been frustrated, but not angry at the princess personally. He had been more curious about why she was acting the way she was. What happens now? He asked. The princess looked around the small lab. Now I ask for your help. I need to understand humans better than telepathy can show me. I need to see your culture, your values, your dreams. Things that cannot be read from minds. Why me? Why not Captain Brooks or Dr. Kim? Because you are the only human whose thoughts do not hurt to read. And because, she hesitated, because I believe you might be the key to saving both our species. Saving us? From what? The princess's face became very serious. There are things my people have not told yours. Dangerous things. We are not as strong as we appear. We need allies, but we are too proud to admit it. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of dangers? I cannot tell you everything tonight. But I will say this. The galaxy is not as safe as the Federation pretends. There are enemies that even the Velthari fear. Enemies that might require unconventional thinking to defeat. She moved toward the door. If you are willing to help me, meet me in Observation Deck C tomorrow night at midnight. Come alone. Tell no one about this conversation. Wait, Jake called out. What if someone sees us together? The princess smiled for the first time since arriving. It made her look less like a cold statue and more like a real person. Then we will both be in terrible trouble. But some things are worth the risk. She opened the door and looked back at him. Think carefully, Jake Martinez. What I am asking could change your life forever. It could also get you branded as a traitor by both our species. Why should I trust you? Jake asked. Because, the princess said softly. I am the only one telling you the truth. Then she was gone, leaving Jake alone in the dark lab with 1,000 questions and one terrible certainty. His quiet life as a language expert was over. He sat there for a long time, staring at the closed door. Tomorrow night he would have to make a choice. Play it safe and report this conversation to Captain Brooks, or trust an alien princess who claimed she needed his help to save 2 civilizations. Jake looked at his computer screen one more time. The brainwave patterns from earlier still glowed there. Evidence that Princess Zarathis was not as cold and distant as she pretended to be. Maybe, just maybe, she was as lonely and scared as he was. He saved his work and turned off the computer. Tomorrow night, he would find out if the most dangerous decision of his life was also the most important one he would ever make. Jake barely slept that night. All day long he went through the motions of his job while thinking about the princess's words. Every time he saw her during the official meeting, she ignored him just like everyone else. But now he knew it was all an act. The day dragged on forever. Captain Brooks was getting more frustrated with each failed attempt to communicate with the princess. Dr. Kim was running out of ideas. The other humans were starting to whisper about going home to Earth with nothing to show for their efforts. Jake kept checking the time. Midnight felt like it would never come. Finally, at 11:50 at night, Jake made his way through the quiet ship corridors. His heart was beating so fast he was sure everyone could hear it. If someone caught him sneaking around to meet the alien princess, he would be in huge trouble. Observation Deck C was at the far end of the ship. It was a small room with huge windows that looked out at the stars. Jake had never been there before. It was usually empty during the night shift. He arrived at exactly midnight. The room was dark except for the starlight coming through the windows. For a moment, Jake thought the princess had changed her mind, then she stepped out of the shadows. You came, she said softly. I almost didn't, Jake admitted. This is crazy. If anyone finds us here, I know the risk you are taking. The princess moved to stand beside him at the window. Your people would call you a traitor. Mine would call me weak for associating with a human. They stood in silence for a moment, looking out at the stars. Jake had never been this close to the princess before. He could smell a faint perfume that reminded him of flowers he had never seen. You said you needed my help to understand humans, Jake said. What do you want to know? Everything. The princess turned to face him. But first, let me show you something that might help you understand why this matters so much. She placed her hand gently on Jake's forehead. Do not be afraid. I am going to share a memory with you. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation. Then suddenly he was not on the ship anymore. He was standing on a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver cities. But the cities were burning. Strange machines that looked like metal spiders were crawling over the buildings, destroying everything they touched. People were running and screaming. The vision changed. Now he saw a massive fleet of these spider machines moving through space. They surrounded planets and consumed them, leaving nothing but empty rocks behind. Another change. A conference room filled with alien leaders from different species. They all looked terrified. Maps showed the spider machines spreading across the galaxy like a disease. The final image was the most horrible. A planet that looked like Earth but covered in the metal spiders. Every living thing was gone. Cities, forests, oceans, all consumed and turned into more machines. The vision ended. Jake found himself back in the observation deck gasping for air. What was that? He whispered. The Devourers, the princess said grimly. An ancient enemy that nearly destroyed the galaxy 1,000 years ago. We thought they were gone forever. We were wrong. Jake sat down heavily in a nearby chair. They're coming back? They never left. They were sleeping, rebuilding their strength. 3 months ago, our scouts discovered them moving again. They have consumed 17 star systems so far. Why didn't you tell us this before? The princess looked ashamed. Because my people are proud and stupid. The Velthari believe we can handle any threat with our advanced technology and telepathic abilities. The High Council refuses to admit we need help. But you think differently? I have studied the old records. When the Devourers first appeared, they nearly won. They adapt to any strategy we use against them. Our logical, predictable tactics become useless very quickly. Jake was starting to understand. And you think humans might be different enough to surprise them? Your minds are chaotic in a way that confuses telepathic species. If the Devourers have learned to predict logical thinking, maybe they cannot predict human thinking. The princess sat down across from him. But I need to understand how human minds really work. Not just the surface thoughts I can read, but the deeper patterns. How you solve problems. How you create new ideas. How you adapt when everything goes wrong. Jake felt overwhelmed. I'm just one person. I can't speak for all humans. You can speak for yourself. And if you are an example of what humans can become, then maybe there is hope. For the next several hours they talked. Jake told her about human history. How humans had fought terrible wars but also created beautiful art. How they had almost destroyed their own planet but then learned to save it. How they could be incredibly selfish but also capable of amazing sacrifice for others. The princess listened to everything with intense interest. She asked questions that no one had ever asked Jake before. Not just about facts, but about feelings and motivations. Why do humans create music? She asked. I don't know, Jake said. Because it makes us feel things, I guess. Joy, sadness, hope. It connects us to each other. But it serves no practical purpose. Not everything has to be practical. Sometimes beauty is enough. The princess was quiet for a long time. My people abandoned music centuries ago. We decided it was inefficient. That's sad, Jake said. Music is one of the best things about being alive. She looked at him strangely. You really believe that? Of course. Don't you have anything in your life that's just for enjoyment? No, everything must serve the empire. Personal pleasure is considered selfish. Jake felt sorry for her. That sounds like a lonely way to live. It is. The words came out so softly that Jake almost missed them. They talked about other things. Human art, literature, philosophy. The princess was especially interested in human stories about underdogs winning against impossible odds. Humans love these stories, Jake explained. David and Goliath. Luke Skywalker defeating the Empire. Regular people doing extraordinary things. Because humans identify with the underdog. I think so. Most people feel small and powerless sometimes. These stories give us hope that we can overcome anything if we try hard enough. The princess nodded slowly. The Velthari do not tell such stories. We prefer tales of superior beings maintaining order. Maybe that's part of the problem, Jake said. If you always expect to win because you're superior, what happens when you meet an enemy you can't beat? The princess stared at him. You become paralyzed by fear and pride. But if you're used to being the underdog, you're always looking for creative solutions. Yes, the princess said excitedly. Yes, that is exactly what we need. As the night went on, Jake found himself forgetting that he was talking to an alien princess. She was smart, and curious and surprisingly funny when she relaxed. She asked him about his childhood, his dreams, his fears. In return, she told him about growing up in the Velthari royal palace, where showing emotion was considered a weakness. I was not allowed to have friends, she said. Other children were either servants who had to obey me, or nobles who wanted to use me for political advantage. That sounds terrible. I thought it was normal until I started reading human literature. Your stories about friendship and love seemed like fantasy to me. I did not believe such connections were real. They are, Jake assured her. They're the most real things in the universe. The princess looked at him with those silver eyes that seemed to see everything. Is that why you became a language expert? To connect with others? Maybe. I always felt like an outsider when I was young. Learning languages helped me understand people from different cultures. It made me feel less alone. You are not alone now, the princess said softly. Something in her voice made Jake's heart skip. He realized that somewhere during their conversation, this had stopped being just about saving the galaxy. He was starting to care about this alien princess as a person. What's your real name? He asked suddenly. What do you mean? Princess Zarathus sounds like a title. What did your parents call you when you were little? She smiled, and Jake realized it was the first genuine smile he had seen from her. Zara, just Zara. I like that better, so do I. They were sitting closer now. Jake could see tiny flecks of blue in her silver eyes. He wondered what it would be like to touch her hand. Then the lights in the corridor outside flickered. Someone was coming. Quick, Zara whispered. Hide behind the equipment panel. Jake dove behind a bank of computers just as the door opened. Through a gap in the panels, he could see Commander Kess enter the observation deck. Princess, the commander said in the Velthari language. You should not be wandering the ship alone at night. I could not sleep, Zara replied coolly. I came here to think, about what? About whether these humans are worth our time. Jake held his breath. Was she going to betray him? And what have you concluded? Commander Kess asked. That they are exactly as primitive and chaotic as we expected. This mission is a waste of time. Commander Kess sounded pleased. Good. The High Council will be relieved to hear that. We can return home and focus on more important matters. Yes, we leave tomorrow. Jake's heart sank. After everything they had shared, was Zara really going to abandon Earth? Commander Kess escorted the princess out of the observation deck. Jake stayed hidden for another 10 minutes before he dared to move. When he finally emerged from his hiding place, he found a small device on the chair where Zara had been sitting. It looked like a crystal, but it was warm to the touch and glowed. The next morning was chaos. Word had spread that the Velthari were leaving. Captain Brooks called an emergency meeting with all the human staff. This is a disaster, she said, pacing back and forth in the conference room. Earth spent 5 years preparing for this moment. If the aliens leave now, we might never get another chance. Dr. Kim looked sick. I don't understand what went wrong. We offered them everything we could think of. Jake sat quietly in the back of the room, the telepathic crystal hidden in his pocket. It felt warm against his fingers, but Zara had not contacted him yet. He wanted to tell Captain Brooks about his secret meetings with the princess, but Zara had warned him to trust no one. Maybe we were too eager, suggested Lieutenant Murphy, one of the military officers. Some species respect strength more than friendliness. Or maybe they just think we're not worth their time, said Dr. Kim bitterly. Captain Brooks stopped pacing. Whatever the reason, we have 6 hours before they leave. If anyone has any ideas, now is the time to share them. The room was quiet. Everyone looked defeated. Jake felt terrible keeping secrets from his teammates. But he remembered what Zara had said. Sometimes the most important moves in a game look like retreats. He had to trust that she knew what she was doing. The meeting ended with no solutions. Jake went back to his lab to pack his equipment. In a few hours, they would all be heading back to Earth with nothing to show for their efforts. He was putting files into boxes when Dr. Alex Kim appeared in his doorway. Alex looked angry, which was unusual for the normally calm scientist. Jake, I need to talk to you, Alex said, closing the door behind him. What about? About where you were last night. Jake's blood went cold. What do you mean? I couldn't sleep, so I went for a walk around the ship. I saw you going toward observation deck C at midnight. You didn't come back for hours. Jake tried to keep his voice steady. I couldn't sleep either. I went to look at the stars. For 3 hours? I had a lot to think about. Alex stepped closer. Jake, if you're hiding something, you need to tell me. This mission is too important for secrets. Before Jake could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The computer voice announced, "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels approaching. This is not a drill." Jake and Alex ran to the command center along with everyone else. Captain Brooks was already there, staring at the main screen with a horrified expression. "What's happening?" Dr. Kim asked. "Look." Captain Brooks pointed at the screen. Jake looked and felt his stomach drop. Ships were coming toward them. But these were not any ships he had ever seen before. They looked like giant metal spiders, just like in the vision Zara had shown him. "The Devourers," he whispered. "What did you say?" Captain Brooks snapped. Jake realized he had spoken out loud. Nothing, Captain." On the screen they could see 5 of the spider ships approaching fast. Each one was the size of a small moon. Behind them were dozens of smaller vessels that looked like metal insects. Commander Kess appeared on the main screen, speaking from the Velthari ship. He looked terrified. "Human vessel, we are under attack by ancient enemies. Prepare for battle." "Battle?" Captain Brooks looked shocked. "We're a diplomatic ship. We don't have weapons." "Then we are all going to die," Commander Kess said grimly. The first spider ship fired a beam of purple energy. It hit the Velthari vessel and began eating through the hull like acid. Jake could see the metal dissolving and reforming into more spider machines. "They're converting the ship," Dr. Kim said in horror, "turning it into more of themselves." Captain Brooks was shouting orders. "All power to shields. Send a distress signal to Earth, prepare escape pods," but Jake knew it was hopeless. The Harmony's Edge was designed for exploration, not war. They had no weapons and weak shields. They would last maybe 5 minutes against the Devourers. Then the crystal in his pocket became burning hot. Zara's voice spoke in his mind. "Jake, can you hear me?" "Yes," he thought back. "I need your help. The Devourers found us sooner than expected. We have to work together or everyone dies. What can I do? I'm not a soldier. You are something more important. You are unpredictable. Listen carefully." Zara quickly explained her plan. It was crazy and dangerous and probably impossible, but it was their only chance. Jake looked around the command center. Everyone was panicking. Captain Brooks was trying to coordinate a defense with no weapons. Dr. Kim was calculating how long their shields would last. The other humans were preparing to abandon ship. "Captain," Jake called out, "I have an idea." "Not now, Martinez. Captain, please. I know about these aliens. I can help." Captain Brooks turned to stare at him. "What are you talking about?" Another explosion rocked the ship. Through the windows they could see pieces of the Velthari vessel floating in space. Half of it had been converted into devourer machines. Jake took a deep breath. "Princess Zarathis has been talking to me in secret. She told me about the devourers. She has a plan, but she needs our help." "You've been meeting with the princess?" Captain Brooks looked furious. "Martinez, that's treason." "It's our only chance to survive," Jake said desperately. Dr. Alex Kim stepped forward. "Captain, I think we should listen to him. We don't have any other options." Captain Brooks hesitated. Another explosion shook the ship. "The shields were failing. What's the plan?" she asked finally. "We have to link our ship's computers with the Velthari systems. Create a hybrid human-alien control system. The princess thinks human unpredictability might confuse the devourers long enough for us to escape." "That's impossible," Dr. Kim protested. "Our technology is completely different." "Not impossible," Jake said. "The princess has been studying our systems for days. She knows how to make it work. But she needs a human pilot who can think in ways the devourers can't predict." "A pilot for what?" Jake pulled out the telepathic crystal. "For a fighter ship that's half human, half Velthari, controlled by both computer logic and human instinct." Captain Brooks stared at the glowing crystal. "You want to link a human mind with alien technology?" "It's been done before," Jake lied. Actually, he had no idea if it had been done before. But they were out of time. A massive explosion nearly knocked everyone off their feet. The Devourer ships were getting closer. "Do it," Captain Brooks ordered. "Kim, help him with the technical setup. Everyone else prepare for evacuation if this doesn't work." The next 30 minutes were the most intense of Jake's life. Working with Dr. Kim and the ship's engineers, they established a computer link with what was left of the Velthari vessel. Princess Zarathis appeared on their screens, no longer pretending to be distant and cold. "Jake," she said, "are you ready for this?" "No," he admitted. "But let's do it anyway." The hybrid fighter was amazing and terrifying. It looked like a human shuttle that had been rebuilt with Velthari crystal technology. Jake could see it on the screens as it detached from both ships and moved toward the Devourer fleet. "Remember?" Zara's voice said in his mind through the telepathic link. "Don't think like a logical pilot. Think like a human who is angry and scared and determined to protect his friends." Jake climbed into the pilot's seat. The controls were unlike anything he had ever seen. Half of them were familiar human switches and buttons. The other half were Velthari crystals that responded to thought instead of touch. As soon as he activated the systems, Jake felt Zara's mind touch his. It was the strangest sensation he had ever experienced. He could feel her thoughts mixing with his own. Her vast knowledge of Velthari technology combined with his human creativity and instinct. "This is incredible," he thought. "Focus," Zara replied. "Here they come." The Devourer ships had detected the small fighter. Dozens of spider drones were moving to intercept it. Their movements were perfectly coordinated like a computer program. Jake did something no logical pilot would do. Instead of trying to dodge the drones, he flew straight at them. At the last second, he spun the ship in a wild spiral that had no tactical purpose except that it felt right. The drones collided with each other, confused by his unpredictable movement. "It's working," Zara said excitedly. "They can't predict what you're going to do next." Jake grinned and dove toward the largest spider ship. The Velthari weapon systems responded to his emotions, firing bursts of energy that matched his anger and determination. Each shot was powered by human feeling rather than alien logic. The Devourers tried to adapt, but every time they predicted his next move, Jake did something completely different. He flew upside down for no reason. He stopped suddenly in the middle of a battle. He sang human songs while firing weapons. "You're driving them crazy," Zara laughed in his mind. "Their programming can't handle chaos." Working together, they destroyed 6 drone ships and damaged one of the main spider vessels. It wasn't enough to win the war, but it was enough to create an opening. "Now," Zara commanded, "get back to the ships. We need to jump to hyperspace before they adapt to your tactics." Jake spun the fighter around and raced back toward the 2 diplomatic vessels. Behind him, the Devourers were regrouping, their tactics shifting to account for human unpredictability. As they docked with Harmony's edge, Jake felt Zara's mind pulling away from his. The telepathic link was breaking. "Wait," he called out mentally. "What happens now?" "Now," Zara replied, "everything changes. You have proven that humans and—" 1 week later, Jake stood in the largest conference room he had ever seen. It was on Earth in the United Nations building, but it had been expanded with Velthari technology to accommodate both species. On one side of the room sat the leaders of Earth, presidents, prime ministers, and generals from every major nation. On the other side sat the Velthari High Council, tall blue figures in glowing robes who had traveled across the galaxy for this meeting. Jake felt very small standing between them. A month ago, he had been a simple language teacher. Now he was supposedly the expert on human-alien cooperation. It was terrifying. Princess Zara stood beside him. She was no longer hiding her interest in humans. In fact, she had become the official Velthari ambassador to Earth. But Jake could see the worry in her silver eyes. This meeting would decide the fate of both civilizations. "The evidence is clear," Dr. Kim was saying as he showed holographic images of the Devourer attack. "These machines are unlike anything we've ever faced. They adapt to conventional tactics within minutes." President Martinez of Earth, no relation to Jake despite the name, leaned forward. "How many of these Devourer ships are there?" High Counselor Veltar, the leader of the Velthari delegation, answered in his deep musical voice. "Our scouts have identified at least 1,000 ships in the main fleet. They are consuming star systems at an increasing rate." "And you believe humans can help fight them?" asked General Roberts, the head of Earth's military. "The demonstration 1 week ago proved it," Princess Zara said. "When human creativity was combined with Velthari technology, we achieved something neither species could do alone." "One small battle," snorted Counselor Velkar, one of the more hostile Velthari leaders. "This proves nothing. Humans are still a primitive species." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but Zara placed a calming hand on his arm. They had discussed this. Some of the Velthari Council still believed cooperation was a mistake. "If humans are so primitive," President Martinez said coolly, "then how did one of them outfight machines that your advanced civilization has been losing to?" Counselor Velkar's blue skin became darker. A lucky accident. Let's test that theory, Jake said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. His voice was shaking, but he forced himself to continue. Give me another ship like the one from last week. Let me train with it for 1 month. Then we'll see if it was just luck. Absolutely not, General Roberts protested. Martinez, you're not a soldier. You could get yourself killed. People are already dying, Jake shot back. 17 star systems have been destroyed. How many more while we argue about whether humans are good enough to help? High Counselor Veltar raised his hand for silence. The human makes a valid point. Time is running short. He looked directly at Jake. But training with our technology would require a permanent telepathic link with a Velthari partner. Such links have never been attempted between our species. The risks are unknown. Jake glanced at Princess Zara. They had talked about this possibility during their secret meetings. The telepathic link they had shared during the battle was temporary and limited. A permanent link would be much deeper and more dangerous. I volunteer to be his partner, Princess Zara said. The room erupted in shocked voices. Several Velthari counselors began arguing in their own language. The human leaders looked confused and worried. Princess, High Counselor Veltar said sternly, a permanent telepathic bond with an alien mind could damage your own mental abilities. It has never been tested. Then we test it now, Zara replied firmly. The alternative is watching both our civilizations get consumed by machines. President Martinez stood up. Wait a minute. What exactly are you proposing? Dr. Kim stepped forward with a holographic display. Based on our analysis of the previous battle, we believe we can create a new type of fighter squadron. Ships that are controlled by human Velthari teams working in telepathic partnership. Think of it as a new kind of pilot, Jake added. Human creativity and instinct guided by Velthari knowledge and technology. But only if the telepathic bonding is safe, General Roberts insisted. Princess Zara looked around the room. Nothing about this war will be safe. But Jake and I are willing to take the risk if it means saving our people. The debate went on for hours. Some leaders thought the idea was brilliant. Others thought it was suicide. But eventually the reality of the situation became clear. Conventional weapons and tactics were failing against the Devourers. They needed something new. The final vote was close, but both governments agreed to try the experiment. 3 months later, Jake stood in the hangar of a new space station built jointly by humans and Velthari. Around him, 12 other human-alien pairs were preparing for their first real combat mission. The telepathic bonding process had been difficult and painful. For weeks, Jake and Zara had practiced linking their minds more and more deeply. Sometimes Jake felt like he was losing himself in her alien thoughts. Sometimes Zara seemed overwhelmed by human emotions she had never experienced before. But gradually, they learned to work together. Jake could access Velthari technical knowledge as easily as his own memories. Zara could tap into human creativity and intuition. They became something new, not quite human, not quite Velthari, but more than either species alone. The other pairs had similar experiences. Captain Brooks was partnered with Commander Kess. Dr. Kim worked with a Velthari scientist named Velara. Each team developed their own unique fighting style. Remember, Princess Zara said as they climbed into their fighter. The Devourers have adapted since our last encounter. They will be expecting some level of unpredictability now. Then we'll have to be even more unpredictable, Jake replied. Their ship was beautiful and strange. It looked like a work of art made from both human steel and Velthari crystal. The controls responded to thought and emotion as much as physical touch. As they launched toward the battle zone, Jake felt Zara's mind merge with his own. Her vast knowledge of space combat combined with his human instincts for improvisation and risk-taking. The Devourer fleet was massive. Hundreds of spider ships surrounded a small human colony that was sending desperate distress signals. The colonists had maybe an hour before their shields failed completely. New plan, Jake announced to the other fighter teams. We don't try to fight the whole fleet. We just create chaos and confusion while the evacuation ships get the colonists to safety. That's not a plan, Captain Brooks protested over the radio. That's just random destruction. Exactly, Jake grinned. Random is what we're good at. The battle that followed was unlike anything in the history of warfare. The human Velthari teams fought with a combination of advanced technology and pure creative madness that the Devourers could not. understand or predict, Jake and Zara flew their ship in patterns that made no tactical sense but felt emotionally right. They used music to coordinate their attacks, letting human songs guide their weapon systems. They painted their ship bright colors in the middle of combat, just because it made them happy. The other teams developed their own wild strategies. Captain Brooks and Commander Kess used human, military discipline combined with Velthari precision to create attacks that were perfectly coordinated but completely unexpected. Dr. Kim and Velara turned their ship into a mobile laboratory, using science experiments as weapons. The Devourers tried to adapt, but every time they changed their tactics, the human-alien teams did something even more unpredictable. The spider ships began making errors, firing at empty space, colliding with each other. In the end, they saved the colony. Not by destroying the Devourer fleet, but by confusing it so badly that the evacuation ships escaped safely. As they returned to the space station, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. Through his link with Zara, he could sense the thoughts and emotions of all the other human Velthari teams. They were becoming more than individual partnerships. They were becoming a new kind of family. "We did it," Zara said softly in his mind. "We survived, you mean?" "No. We proved that two different species can become something better together than they ever were apart." Jake smiled as he looked around at the other ships flying in formation with them. Humans and Velthari working as one. It was the beginning of something amazing. 6 months later, the war against the Devourers was going better than anyone had hoped. The human Velthari fighter squadrons had won 12 major battles. More importantly, they had inspired other species in the galaxy to try their own experimental partnerships. Jake and Zara were no longer just partners in combat. They had become the first ambassadors of a new kind of relationship between species. They traveled to different worlds, teaching others how to form telepathic bonds and create hybrid technologies. They were also, Jake realized, falling in love. It was complicated and strange, loving someone whose thoughts you could read and who could read yours. But it was also wonderful. They understood each other in ways that went deeper than words. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked one evening as they watched the sunset from their quarters on the space station. "Giving up your old life to bond with a human?" Zara smiled and took his hand. "My old life was cold and lonely and full of rules about what a princess should and shouldn't do. This life is dangerous and unpredictable and full of possibilities, so that's a no. That's a definitely not." She looked out at the stars.